Hello and welcome back to Jenna Gets Creative. A little less than a month ago, Merphy Napier did a video called My Bookish Preferences, and she asked for everybody to pause as she answered new questions, or write the question down and give the response. She was asking for us to do it in the comments, but of course, I also have a channel. I'm going to respond with a video. The first question is, which perspective is your favorite, first person or third person? I do appreciate both. I do have favorites in both, but if I have to pick one, I am going to pick the third person because that gives the narrative voice more freedom to bounce around, go where they need to be in the heads they need to be, and not just be locked inside one character's head. The second question is, what book format is your favorite, and then rank all of the possible formats. So this one, it depends on context. If you're just asking what's my favorite format to own because it's cool, well obviously then hardbacks. If we're talking what's my favorite in terms of what's easy and practical and comfortable to use, hardbacks are actually very low on the list. Top of the list is trade paperbacks. Trade paperbacks would be something like this. They are larger page sizes. Some of them actually get to be the same size as hardcovers, but they are a paperback cover. The reason I prefer these is because they open pretty nicely without damaging, breaking the spine. They're really easy to hold, even one-handed. They handle damage, wear and tear from bringing them around places a lot better than a hardback does. Counterintuitive, I know, but hardbacks are actually quite delicate. These are also usually cheaper than hardbacks, and publishing companies are actually starting to do a really good job of making paperbacks feel really luxurious. This one, it's your standard glossy one. It's like 10 years old now, but it's got the cool cutout in it. But then you get ones like this with the nice matte finish. They feel really nice to touch. They feel really luxurious. This one here, the first book in G.D. Falkson's Ouroboros cycle, it actually feels soft. The finish on this is so unique, so interesting to touch. I was really disappointed that the next one doesn't quite feel the same. You can do so much with these covers, and they're big enough that they end up looking gorgeous. Moving on down the list, it was hard to choose which order this goes in, but ultimately I did choose to rank ebook first, audiobook second. Ebook, you can have all of these books and more, 10 times more, 100 times more, on one little device, or even backed up to the cloud, not even currently on a device. They take little to no actual physical space. These days, e-readers, there's such a variety, they're so good. You can get ones that are a fully functional tablet, you can have an app installed on your phone, or you can get dedicated e-ink reading devices that really feel like you're reading a paper book, except it's an electronic device that's holding a library of books. Hello, kitty cat. Pebbles is back to say hi, folks. Say hi, Pebbles. Next on the list is audiobooks. Audiobooks are great because I can enjoy audiobooks while I'm doing other things, like producing the art you see on the other 2 days on this channel. I can also listen to audiobooks while I'm cooking, while I'm cleaning, while we're on a really long road trip, all of those kind of situations where I wouldn't necessarily be able to read with my eyes, regardless of the format. A lot of people will argue that audiobooks aren't actually reading. I say that's false. There is scientifically no difference in the way your brain processes language and words once it enters your brain. It doesn't matter if you read it with your eyes or if you heard it with your ears. You can put people in brain scanning equipment, MRI, CT, whatever, have them read a book with your eyes, have them listen to a book. The scan is going to be virtually the same because the same processes are occurring in the brain. Historically, every culture in the world at some point relied exclusively on oral storytelling traditions to keep their culture, their history, and their stories alive. Personally, when I experience a book as an audiobook or as an ebook, give it about a month, and if the narrator of the audiobook wasn't particularly notable, or I don't have some other reason to really particularly remember that it was an ebook file, I'm not going to be able to tell you if I read it with my eyes or my ears. I don't remember which of those quick tour reads I blasted through 3 months ago, or ebooks or audiobooks, unless the narrator stood out. Moving on down the ranking list, we get to hardbacks, ever so slightly edging out mass market paperbacks. This, of course, is your hardback. You might also call it a hardcover. It has a fairly thick, sturdy hardcover. These days, almost always covered in a dust jacket. They're pretty, they're luxurious, they're heavy, they're expensive. The binding does not stand up to nearly as much punishment as a paperback book. Daniel Green proved it. Go watch that video. Google for it, you'll find it. It was one of his mail time videos, but you'll find it. If you want to display a book, this is the format to get. If you want to have the author sign it, this is the format to get. If you are ordering a special edition of your favorite book, this is the edition to get. If you want a take-along book to actually read and reread and pass around and share with your family and friends, not this. Last and actually least in this case, the mass market paperback, also known as the pocket paperback, because they supposedly fit very nicely in a man's pocket. Man's pocket, because we all know women's fashion does not give us real pockets. So these do have a lot of the perks of the trade paperback. They're cheap, they stand up to a lot of damage. They're cheap, they stand up to a lot of damage. Sometimes they can have the same quality cover. The problem is, with such a small page size, with such a small footprint, you end up having thicker books. And you are relying on this glued binding to handle this much space instead of this much space. It's almost impossible to read a book like this, especially when they have tiny inside margins, without breaking that spine. Once you break the spine once, you're probably going to break it multiple times. And let's face it, if you don't break the spine, if you can't make it lay open like this, or heaven forbid, do this, it's not comfortable to hold in one hand because it's so thick. The downside to that is, look at this ugly spine. You can barely read this. Look how it's starting to come apart in this corner. I'm worried I might start losing pages out of this. Case in point, this is my mother's childhood copy of Black Beauty. This particular edition was printed in 1969. The cover is no longer attached. Neither are the last 2 pages. These do not last the test of time. Now, I wanted to amend this question and also add, if you prefer print formats, do you prefer nice, neatly trimmed edges, or do you prefer deckled edges, also known as uncut or untrimmed edges? If you don't know what I'm talking about, observe this copy of The Other Wind by Ursula Le Guin. This is a deckled edge. This unevenness of the page length, that's created by the fact that the pages are folded together in small bunches and then sewn into the binding, so the pages at the center of that folded group are going to be longer at this end than the pages at the outside. They've got a little more ways to go around that folded group. I believe it's called a magazine, those groups. I used to know a bit about bookbinding. As a teenager, I was fascinated by the look of this. I thought this was really cool. It was a novelty to me. I believe this was the first book I owned with this deckled edge. And then I quickly realized why it's not so great and why most modern books are cleanly cut. Because when you're trying to flip the next page, you flip 5 pages. If you're the type of person who gets halfway through the page and you're already holding that edge, every edge is at a different length. It looks cool. It's hard to actually handle when you're reading. Question 3, do you prefer character-focused or plot-focused books? I feel like a hypocrite not picking character because I do love a book with a strong character. I am the type of reader who doesn't mind breaks in the book to just hang out with the characters if I love them. I am the type of reader who wants another chapter to see the happily ever after. because you made me care about those characters and now I want to just know how their life turned out. But if you have 400 pages of that and no plot, it's not a good book. I need a plot. I need stakes. I need goals. I need something to actually happen. And because of that, I have to say I prefer plot-driven books. Number 4 is, how do you feel about prose? Keep in mind, prose and description are different. Description is just the unloading of information. Prose is the style in which you are writing. It's how flowery, how flowy, how beautiful your work is. If you can convey the information that needs to be conveyed, keep the plot moving, give the description I need and nothing more, and make it beautiful prose, then I am all here for it. If you take breaks to gild the lily just to prove that you can, I'm not here for it. What I said in the blog post here is that if I just want to read something pretty and not necessarily get meaning out of it, I'm gonna go read poetry. Now that's not a slam on poetry. I know a lot of poetry does have deep meaning, and I do normally read for that deep meaning and analyze it. But I think we can all agree that you don't have to analyze a poem to appreciate its beauty. Number 5, do you prefer to read about platonic or romantic relationships? And for this, I have to say platonic. I do like a good romance because I like a good emotional story between two characters who love each other or are discovering that they love each other. I love that. I don't read romance genre books, not romance subplot, but books that are called romance most of the time, because I'm not here for the sex. And a lot of romance books are just a loosely veiled excuse to write sex. It's not that I'm a prude, it's that that's not who I am, that's not what I'm interested in, so I can't connect to those characters, and I don't care about characters that are only here thinking with their little head, trying to get some. Now, on the other hand, when you have characters who care deeply about each other like they are family, or they actually are family, and it's not necessarily a romantic love, it's just a friendship, it's just a sisterhood, a brotherhood, it's just a parent-child relationship that's really great and really strong, I'm all here for that. Give me a lot of that. So yes, I prefer platonic relationships. Number 6 is, do you like a book with a lot of description? And if you were paying attention in the prose answer, you will know that yes, but I would love to know what all of the characters look like. I would love to know what the setting looks like. I do need to know enough about the world and the history and the culture to have context for everything you're going to present in the story, to be able to understand the plot, basically. But I don't need unnecessary detail. I don't want talking heads in a starkly lit white room, unless that's literally what they are, because I do read a lot of science fiction and fantasy. But I don't need to know the thread count of that random person's shirt. Don't tell me how many flowers are carved into the intricate pattern on the legs of the chair in the corner, unless that's going to be a murder weapon and that number of flowers are going to be imprinted in the victim's skin. I am currently listening to the audiobook version of Brandon Sanderson's The Final Empire, which is the first book in the Mistborn series, and in this book we have a character named Vin who is playing the role of a low noble lady. She's getting used to the idea of going to court. At the beginning of this phase in her life, playing this part, going to court, she's not used to the ball gowns, so we get a lot of reflection on how silly and frivolous these gowns are. By the time she's used to it, we get, she wore the black gown today because she wanted to stand out. She wore the blue gown today because she wanted to impress so-and-so. But we don't know what the gowns look like beyond that. And that's perfect, because Vin doesn't care, so why do we care? Number 7, do you prefer standalones or series? Both in different contexts. If I am reading a new author for the first time, I really want a standalone. I want a book that is start to end self-contained. It's not relying on characters and lore established in something else by that author. it's not setting up stuff that will pay off in a future book. Once I have found an author that I really like, once I have found a world and characters that I love, I want more, I want to continue, I am looking for a series. Of course, this leads to the conundrum where I pick a standalone to try an author, I fall in love with it, and I wish that that would spawn a series. Number 8, single POV or multiple POV. If I have to pick just one, I'm going to pick single POV because multiple POV can get messy. If you have too many, if you don't do it well, I can't handle it. This is the primary reason why I did not finish A Song of Ice and Fire, alongside the fact that Martin has some very strange ideas about how the average woman thinks about her own body on a regular basis. If you have 2 points of view, that's probably perfect. You get that dynamic of switching back and forth, it's always interesting, and if both characters are likable, if both parts are done well, you don't miss the other while you're in one or the other, it's great. Authors that are good with multiple POVs can usually do 3 or 4 and do it really well. Once you get into the territory of 5 or 6, you start losing it no matter how well you do it, because either you have a case where some characters are getting seriously neglected and other characters are getting way more page time, or all the characters are getting equal page time, but that means you're spending that much less time with your favorite characters. Tyrion and Arya, by the way. Final question, number 9, if you could have one and only one, do you need a strong start, a strong middle, or a strong finish? I'm really tempted to pick a strong finish, because if I really like a book and the ending is weak, I'm going to be mad about it. I'm possibly not going to read more by the author. I'm probably going to dock points in the rating when I review it, because that is such a letdown. But with the volume of books I read these days, especially when I have to do tour reads and I am making snap decisions on whether I am committing to this review or asking to switch to some other type of post about it to fulfill my commitment, if that starting is super weak, I don't have time for it. I'm putting it down and moving on to the next book. Therefore, strong start has to be my choice. Let me know what your answers are to those 9 questions in the comments down below. Go check out Merphy's video if you want her answers. I will link that video for sure. If you're looking for more to watch, I've got some suggestions up here on the left side of the screen. Don't forget to like, comment, maybe even subscribe, and if you like living life creatively, whatever that means to you, I'd love to have you along for the ride. Bye guys!